Welcome back to Hot Air with me, Joshua Robber, and today we're going to spill the rainbow tea, okay? If you're new around here, this is the episode where we take some of the biggest LGBTQ plus headlines that are making news around the world. We cut through the clickbait, we explain what's actually happening, and then, of course, I'll give you my completely unsolicited opinion. Well, I mean, it is my podcast, so is it unsolicited? I don't know. Okay, one of the things that I think is really important right now is making sure that we are consuming news without letting it consume us, because social media has a way of making everything feel like the world is ending every single day. And I kind of think that it is sometimes. And while there are absolutely stories we need to be paying attention to, I also think it's important to slow down, look at the facts, understand the bigger picture, and maybe laugh a little bit along the way. So that's exactly what I hope to do today. We have a lot to get into. A lot has been going down. In this episode, we're going to talk about the Trump administration's proposal to explore warning labels for queer television programming. We're going to talk about why one of Pete Hegseth's spiritual advisors thinks that the LGBTQ plus acronym should also include the letter P, and why science says that's complete nonsense. We're also diving into Pete Hegseth's new high testosterone Department of War. I don't know why I got an accent there. That whole weird initiative, and why testosterone has become one of the most misunderstood hormones on the internet. Because if testosterone being high meant you were masked, I'd be butch as fuck. Then we're heading overseas to discuss the horrific attack. This is serious. The attack in Berlin that just happened over the weekend as I'm recording this. We'll get into that, and we're gonna finally talk about something that affects almost every LGBTQ plus creator, business, nonprofit, and small organization in 2026, and why social media platforms, particularly Meta, continue to suspend queer accounts, and why building your entire business on one app is becoming very risky. Don't I know it? So, as always, this is not a news show designed to make you angry for an hour, although I will be and you might be. I want this to be about understanding what's happening, calling out misinformation wherever it may exist, celebrating progress when I see it, and standing up for our community more than anything when it matters, and hopefully leaving you feeling a little more informed and thankful that you pressed play. And before we jump in, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. I'm going to have a lot of accents today, I think. My account is @_hotairpod. Head to my website, hotairwithjoshuarobert.com, to shop my merch, submit your listener stories, and your topic suggestions. So the headlines are going to be real messy today. The opinions of my opinions are going to be loud as hell. And thankfully, I have a cocktail and receipts. So let's hit it.
HOTAIR, hot takes therapy, no filter. Say what I mean. HOTAIR, let's be real. You're listening to Hot Air.
Part 1. The Trump administration wants warning labels on LGBTQ plus TV shows. Okay, let's kick things off with a story that made me stop scrolling and rub my eyeballs and think there's no way this isn't from The Onion, but unfortunately, this is real. So the Trump administration's FCC, which is led by Chairman Brendan Carr, is exploring whether television shows that include transgender or non-binary characters or storylines should carry additional content warnings or labels beyond the traditional TV ratings system. The FCC says it's responding to concerns from some parents who believe programs it's even hard for me to say, discussing gender identity are being rated as appropriate for children without enough transparency, and asking whether the current rating system should be changed to include disclosures about gender identity or transgender and gender non-binary programming. I just fell asleep. Good God. So let's slow this down for a second, because I think it's very important that we separate what's happening from what people are saying is happening. And on these news episodes, I do a lot of research, bunch of different articles to make sure I know what's going on. So at the time that I'm recording this, the FCC has not ordered television networks to slap warning labels on every single queer show. This is a public inquiry. The agency is asking for comments about whether the existing ratings system should change. And that's an important distinction because facts matter, especially when emotions are running high from these conservative nut jobs. Now, that being said, can we talk about the optics here? Because when I hear the phrase warning label, my brain immediately thinks of, like, I don't know, bleach, cigarettes, fireworks, or those little packets and beef jerky that say do not eat, like, not Heartstopper. Like, imagine opening Netflix, okay, and it says, warning, contains two teenage boys awkwardly holding hands. Viewer discretion is advised. Like, the fuck? The actual fuck, okay? My God. Somebody protect the children from healthy communication and emotional vulnerability. And what blows my mind is, like, you're protecting your children that you're assuming are straight because you're straight. Like, you dumb fucks. Okay, honestly, if you watched the show Heartstopper, the most unrealistic thing about that show isn't that the characters are gay. It's that a group of teenagers actually talks about their feelings instead of sending one-word texts and ghosting each other. Okay, but I said I wasn't going to, well, I told myself I wasn't going to get too crazy today, but I need to reel it in for a second. Here's why this story actually matters beyond the headlines. Because throughout history, labeling a group as something that requires a special warning has consequences. Whether it is books, music, movies, comic books, or television, warning labels don't just inform people, they influence how society views the thing that is being labeled. So even if the stated goal is simply to provide parents with more information, critics argue that singling out LGBTQ identities sends a message that queer people themselves are something that is inherently different or wrong or potentially harmful, which is obviously the reason this is being considered, because of religious freaks that think the gays are sins, whatever. Here's the part that I found really interesting, though. So, according to an analysis by GLAAD, about 80% of the more than 33,000 public comments submitted to the FCC opposed the proposal. And a separate Morning Consult survey also found that roughly 2/3 of Americans and nearly 7 in 10 parents said parents should make viewing decisions themselves without the government requiring special labels for shows that include LGBTQ families or characters. Many respondents also said that television should reflect the diversity of real American families. Now, you can absolutely believe that parents should have information about what their children watch. I mean, Google it if you're concerned, okay? Honestly, I think that's a reasonable conversation to have. Parents already rely on TVY, TVPG, TV14, TVMA, like, plus labels for violence or language or sexual content and all the other themes in television. Reasonable people can debate whether those systems work well enough. But here's where I think we need to be very careful. If the standard becomes a character simply existing as queer deserves its own warning, then where does that line end? Does a kid with two moms need a label? Does a Disney movie with a gay side character need a label? Does a documentary about Stonewall Uprising need a label? Does every show that features a transgender person suddenly become something that parents should be warned about before pressing play? Because here is my issue. Being LGBTQ is not an action. It isn't a graphic scene. It isn't profanity. It isn't violence. It is how we identify. And that is fucking important. One of the things I've always tried to remind myself, and honestly remind all of us in multiple episodes, is that representation isn't about convincing people to become something. It's about letting people know that they are not alone and that we exist. And I can still remember how small queer representation existed, or how little there was of it when I was growing up. And when it did exist, the gay characters were usually the punchline, the victim, like, or dead by the end of the movie. Like, we've reached a place where queer people get to be main characters sometimes, where they're the love interest, where they can be a superhero, the awkward teenager, the lawyer, the doctor, the parent, like, you know, like a human fucking being. That is not dangerous because that is reality. So I'm going to keep following this story and how it plays out because that's really as far as it's went. People are requesting this, people are commenting on it, whatever. And I will, of course, bring updates, hopefully based on facts, not panic. But I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And if anything needs a warning, it is any straight, white, cisgender male character because they're the ones fucking up the world right now. So we should put warning labels basically on every show. There's a straight white man in this show. Be warned because they are the fucking worst. Okay, moving on. Part 2. Why does LGBTQ need the letter P? Honestly, like buckle up because the next story, I'm wiping my face if you're not watching, like a hand, face, palm to the face. Like this makes my eye twitch, okay? Like it's kind of hysterical because it's so fucking out there. But recently, Doug Wilson, the Christian nationalist pastor and spiritual advisor, who has preached at Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's Pentagon worship services, oh my God, so many eye rolls, gave an interview where he argued that the LGBTQ acronym should include the letter P for pedophilia. And when asked directly whether pedophilia belongs under the queer umbrella, Wilson responded, absolutely. He went on to argue that queer people and pedophiles are all part of what he described as a broader rejection of biblical sexual norms. Now, let's stop right the fuck there because I've got some opinions, okay? And apparently this guy has opinions, like controversial opinions. But this is not an opinion. This is a statement that is simply supported not by evidence. His statement, not supported by any evidence, okay? So let's talk about this, okay? Pedophilia is not a sexual orientation, and it is not recognized as part of the LGBTQ community by any major LGBTQ organization, medical association, psychiatric organization, or law enforcement agency. Being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or trans describes consensual relationships or identities involving adults, okay? Child sexual abuse is a crime involving the exploitation of someone who cannot legally or ethically consent. And those two things, very different, you fucking idiot. And I literally cannot believe that I am having this conversation with myself in 2026. It's like saying vegetarians, which I am, and serial killers belong in the same category because technically they both eat food. Like that's the only thing I could come up with. Like it makes no sense at all. The logic completely falls apart the second that you look at it. And what frustrates me so much about comments like these isn't just that they are offensive, it's that they are dangerous because they distract us from the actual conversation that we should be having, which is how do we actually protect children, mostly from straight, white, cisgender men. Okay, if your goal is protecting kids, and I think every single decent human being on the planet agrees that it should be, then we should probably focus on what decades of research actually tells us instead of recycling a myth that has been used against the queer community for generations. Now, study after study has found no evidence that LGBTQ people are more likely to sexually abuse children than heterosexual people. In fact, experts have repeatedly rejected attempts to link sexual orientation with sexual abuse because the evidence simply is not there. And if you've been paying attention to the news lately, you have probably noticed something else that is quite a trend. When major child exploitation or child abuse arrests make national headlines, they do not fit the narrative that there should be a P for pedophilia in LGBTQ+. We have seen youth pastors arrested, straight, white, cis youth pastors. We have seen coaches. We have seen teachers, police officers, businessmen, politicians, MAGA supporters, January 6th rioters, family members, men with wives and children of their own arrested. And the trend is that they are straight, they are cisgender men, and they've made headlines in countless cases recently. Not because being straight causes abuse, of course it does not, but because these crimes are committed by offenders across society. They are crimes of abuse, power, opportunity, and exploitation, not sexual orientation. Pretending otherwise doesn't protect a single child. It simply gives people a convenient scapegoat while ignoring the actual warning signs that experts tell us to watch out for. And that's what bothers me the most, right? Every minute that we spend arguing that a rainbow flag somehow makes someone dangerous is a minute that we are not talking about grooming behaviors, mandatory reporting, background checks, educating children about consent and safe adults, improving investigation, supporting survivors, or making institutions accountable when they cover up abuse, or releasing the Epstein files, or arresting the fucking president. Like, those conversations save children, not debating whether every pedophile is fucking part of the LGBTQ plus community. Like, culture war talking points don't protect children. I also find it fascinating how often queer people get accused of sexualizing children when the vast majority of queer representation is quite literally just existing. Like a kid having two moms, or what I said earlier, two boys holding hands, or a transgender teenager trying to survive high school. That's somehow treated as controversial while we continue to ignore the actual factors that allow abuse to happen behind closed doors. And we continue to ignore that the president showed up thousands of times in the Epstein files and was besties with this pedophile. And here is where I land on this before I get too heated, okay? If someone wants to criticize an individual who commits a horrific crime, absolutely throw the book at them, lock them up, protect children at all costs. I don't care if you're gay, straight, trans, bi, whatever. If you abuse a child, I believe you should be put on an island and just die there, okay? Don't smear millions of innocent queer people with one of the most vile crimes imaginable simply because it makes a convenient political and religious talking point for you fucking pussies. That is not protecting children. That is prejudice. And frankly, kids deserve better than adults using them as props in a culture war. This pastor or priest or whoever the fuck he is, spiritual advisor, talking about this isn't doing anything to protect children. I say, look at this motherfucker's computer because I can guarantee some shit's on there, because usually that's how it goes. These straight white pastors or priests talk out about it, and then a few weeks later they're arrested for something. But you're not doing anything to help the kids. You're pointing blame away from who? People like you, because statistically, you're more likely to commit that crime than not. So let's keep the focus where it belongs, which is on the facts, on the evidence, on survivors, and on actually preventing abuse, not inventing connections that simply do not exist. So you can take that letter P and put it up your ass. I'm going to move on because I'm going to get canceled so hard. All right, and I'm going to take the tone down a little bit because we're going to move on to something that is quite serious. Part 3, which is Berlin Pride was supposed to be a celebration, and instead, unfortunately, it became a crime scene. So this story is a difficult one. It's important that we talk about it because this weekend should have been about joy and community and celebrating how far we have come as a community. Instead, people around the world woke up to heartbreaking headlines coming out of Berlin. On Saturday, during Berlin's annual Christopher Street Day Pride celebrations, which is one of the largest pride events in Europe, a van drove into a crowd near the festival. And from what I've read, the man driving the van also got out and attacked people with a machete. At least one person was killed and multiple others were injured. Police immediately launched a massive manhunt after the driver fled the scene, and German authorities have since said that they are investigating the attack as a suspected act of Islamic extremism. And the suspect was later located and killed during a confrontation with police. And the Pride celebrations were unfortunately canceled as emergency crews flooded the area, and what was supposed to be a day of music and dancing and visibility turned into a scene of obviously chaos and, grief throughout the community. And I don't know about you, but every time I read a headline like this, I have the exact same reaction. I'm always like, seriously? Like, we're still doing this, but that has shifted a bit because I'm no longer surprised due to the rhetoric that is coming out from leaders from multiple countries, not just the United States, that is very anti-gay. Like the idea that a group of people gathering to celebrate love and their identities and community somehow becomes a target is so wild to me. Like, it breaks my heart every single time because Pride, as we know, as I've said, it's not a party. It's never been a party. It exists so that queer people that have spent generations being told to stay quiet, stay hidden, and stay afraid can celebrate themselves. And like, Pride is the opposite of hate and disdain for people. It is just all about love and openness. It's thousands of people saying, like, we're still here and you're welcome too. And that's exactly why these attacks hit a little bit differently. And what's always fascinated me about hate is that it requires so much energy. Like, think about it. Somebody literally woke up or spent their entire life hating us clearly and was like, you know what? I'm going to dedicate my day to today making everyone miserable and driving my van into a crowd. Like, imagine having that kind of free time, but like that mentality in your brain. I barely have enough energy to like fold my laundry when I'm done with it. It takes so much energy to be hateful. And I I get where it comes from, religion around the world that is vastly different and vastly anti-gay, but it's fucking embarrassing. And naturally so, when things like this happen over and over and over again, when tragedies like this happen, our brains start naturally asking ourselves if we're safe or not. And that is normal. It's how human psychology works. Like, we are now more so than ever, I think we're scanning for danger because we want to stay alive. The problem is that fear becomes very contagious if we let it. And this one horrific event, rightfully so, starts convincing us that nowhere is safe, that everyone is dangerous, and maybe it's better to stay home. And that's kind of what they want. That's what these people want from us. That's exactly what terrorism is designed to do. It's not just about harming the victims in that moment. It's about changing the behavior of everyone who's observing that moment. And that's where I think that the LGBTQ plus community, I mean, we've been pretty remarkable because we have never stopped showing up. We know what it's like to be resilient. We know that we have to keep showing up. Like, think about it, right? The AIDS crisis didn't erase us. Pulse nightclub didn't erase us. Club Q didn't erase us. Laws that are trying to silence us have not erased us. And every generation of queer has faced moments where fear could have won. And yet, every June, and frankly, every fucking other month, okay, we keep marching, we keep loving, we keep existing, and we show up for other people, and we show up for other marches, and we fight for the rights of other people as well. That is resilience. That doesn't mean that we ignore what happened, because we can't. It doesn't mean we pretend that everything is okay. We absolutely mourn with the community, and we hold space for people that were injured and killed, and we support the families and everyone who experienced the trauma, but we also have to refuse to hand hatred the final fucking word. What I keep coming back to is, if your identity is threatened by seeing two men holding hands, or two women dancing together, or a transgender person existing peacefully in public, the problem is not with them, obviously. The problem is with the incredible amount of insecurity required to feel threatened by someone else's happiness. So, to everyone in Berlin and to everyone who attended Pride, not even just this weekend in Berlin, but around the fucking world in Pride Month, and to everyone in the queer community who has seen the headlines, who feels the feels, and like feels that's not in their stomach, I hope you know something, that you are not alone, that the queer community will always be standing up with you, that we have been global, we're not fucking going anywhere. And when something like this happens in Berlin, people in San Diego feel it. People in New York feel it. People in London feel it. People in Toronto feel it. In Tokyo, everyone, we all feel it, because no matter where we live, we've all spent some part of our lives wondering whether it was safe to simply be ourselves. And we're connected whether we like it or not. So today, instead of ending this story, I guess, in fear, I would rather end it with defiance. So keep going to Pride. Don't let terrorists prevent you from celebrating who you are. I mean, easier said than done. Keep holding your partner's hand. Keep being visible. Keep living your life. And when you need to, stand the fuck up and fight the fuck back. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that the LGBTQ plus community has survived far worse than people who wanted us to disappear. And every single time we have showed up anyway, bigger, badder, and hotter than ever. Part 4. Apparently, the Pentagon is now running a high-T Department of War. Queens, get it. I'm going to go back to being my sassy, cunty self now, okay? Because, I actually thought this headline was satire at first, okay? But Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth recently announced that the U.S. military will begin annual testosterone deficiency screenings for service members over the age of 30, with younger troops able to volunteer for testing. If a service member is medically found to have clinically low testosterone, they can choose testosterone replacement therapy. Shut the fuck up, Pete. Jesus. Hegseth said that the goal is to improve military readiness, health, resilience, and what he called creating a high T Department of War. High T. Queen. Get it? High tea, pinky up, sipping your teacups. Come on. What the hell? Okay. Now, if someone has clinically diagnosed low testosterone, of course, yes, you should get medical care. Low testosterone is a real medical condition called hypogonadism. Hypogonadism. That's what we're going with, okay? So clinically low testosterone can cause fatigue, loss of muscle mass, depression, low libido, difficulty recovering from workouts, decreased bone density, and other legitimate health issues, okay? Doctors diagnose it with symptoms plus repeated blood tests. Not just because somebody watched 3 Joe Rogan clips and suddenly thinks they're low T. That's not how this works. Medical organizations have long supported testosterone replacement therapy for people who genuinely need it. So I'm not criticizing medicine as we move forward in this. What I am criticizing is the wild-ass messaging coming from Pete Hegseth's wild-ass mouth. Because somewhere along the way, we've created a very bizarre internet mythology that testosterone is basically liquid masculinity, as if there's a direct equation that goes okay, more testosterone equals more manly, more dominant, more attractive, more successful, taller, more straight. No, okay? Here's what science says. Well, science just says no. That is not how hormones work. Testosterone absolutely plays an important role in muscle growth and red blood cell production, in libido and energy. But testosterone levels naturally vary enormously between healthy men. 2 people can have very different testosterone levels and be completely healthy. And perhaps most importantly, having testosterone in the upper end of the normal range does not magically transform your personality. It does not determine your sexual orientation. It doesn't decide whether you like football or Broadway. It doesn't make you emotionally unavailable. It doesn't make you start grilling steaks while listening to country music with your red MAGA hat on. That's not what high T does. Trust me. I know, because I had my testosterone tested very recently. And the doctor that I met with and tested me and spoke to me looked at my labs and basically said, Jesus, congratulations. These are fantastic. We won't even prescribe you anything because it would not do anything. So according to these internet myths about high testosterone, I should basically be 6'4". I should be driving a lifted pickup truck, maybe wrestling bears on the weekend. I should be married to someone named Jessica. I should be voting for whoever manufactures the biggest American flag. But instead, I am 5'7", 37 years old, gay as fucking hell, not all that butch. I know, lyrics to every Pussycat Dolls song. I'm a vegetarian. I decorate my apartment with dried eucalyptus, and I could identify 12 different shades of beige at West Elm without breaking a sweat, okay? So someone explained to me how my testosterone apparently forgot to make me straight. My life would have been a hell of a lot easier if my T actually worked that way. The science does not support the idea that high testosterone makes you strong, butch, and straight. And here is where the story gets even more interesting. For years, we have heard arguments from many of these same political leaders that hormone therapy is somehow unnatural and dangerous or inappropriate when we're talking about transgender adults receiving medically supervised gender affirming care. The Trump administration has defended policies restricting transgender service members in part because of their medical treatments, including hormone therapy. Yet now, we've enthusiastically talked about expanding hormone screening and making testosterone therapy more accessible for cisgender troops that have low testosterone levels. And that contradiction certainly has not gone unnoticed. Even a federal judge recently questioned the Pentagon about how it justifies embracing hormone treatment in one context while treating it very differently in another. And here's the irony that absolutely kills me. Hormones are hormones, right? They're hormones. Hormones are just hormones, people. They're medications prescribed by doctors to treat specific medical conditions. That is medicine. The medication itself doesn't suddenly become good or bad depending on whether the patient is cisgender or transgender. Now, obviously, these are different medical conditions or requirements with different treatment goals, and they shouldn't be conflated, right? They're not the same thing. But if your argument is that we trust doctors and hormone therapy when it helps this group, it's fair to ask why that trust disappears when the patient is a part of another group, that group being the transgender community. I also worry about like the cultural message this sends to young men because we're already living through this explosion of what people online call T-maxing. Like social media is flooded with influencers convincing men that every problem in their lives, from anxiety to confidence to dating, is caused by low testosterone. And experts have warned that this oversimplifies male health and encourages unnecessary testing and unnecessary treatment when many issues have far more complex causes, like sleep deprivation, chronic stress, depression, obesity, overtraining, poor nutrition, and certain medical conditions can all affect testosterone levels. Sometimes the answer isn't an injection. Sometimes it's 8 hours of sleep and logging off your fucking TikTok. And what I wish we would teach young men instead is that your masculinity is not measured by a blood test. Your confidence is not stored in your fucking testicles or the size of your dick. Your worth as a man is not determined by whether your testosterone is at 400 or 900. Some of the strongest men I've ever met cry. Some wear pink. Some stay home with their kids. Some are straight. Some are gay. Some are trans. And strength has never been about hormones alone. It's about character, resilience, integrity, and how you treat other people. So, if the Pentagon wants to screen troops who genuinely have symptoms of hormone deficiency and make sure they receive evidence-based medical care, great, whatever, right? But let's stop pretending that testosterone is some magical potion that manufactures masculinity. Because if that were true, again, I would have a lot more flannel in my closet and I'd probably have a lot fewer throw pillows on my fucking bed. Part 5. If your entire business depends on Instagram, should one algorithm get to decide whether you exist? Long part 5. Okay. This is the last little thing I want to cover for today's episode because there's a lot going on. But this on the surface sounds like a tech story, but I actually think it's more of a free speech story, a business story, and like honestly a queer survival story all rolled into one. Multiple stories, actually. So this week, one of San Francisco's oldest and most iconic gay bars, which is The Stud, had an Instagram account suddenly suspended after someone repeatedly reported its posts as human trafficking. Not nudity, not threats, human trafficking. The suspension happened literally the weekend before Door Alley, one of the biggest weekends of the year for queer nightlife in San Fran. And it's a weekend that helps keep businesses like the Stud financially alive. And after a huge public outcry from community members, elected officials, and LGBTQ organizations, Meta restored the account. But the owners say that the damage was already done because the social media is their primary way of reaching their customers. Now, here's what immediately caught my attention. This was not an isolated mistake. Over the past year, year and a half-ish, we have seen queer organizations, creators, abortion information pages, and sexual health organizations repeatedly report that their accounts have been removed, restricted, shadow banned, or demonetized, or just randomly disappear. I've seen it with people I know. And Meta has also changed portions of its content moderation policies, which is drawing criticism from organizations like the Human Rights Campaign, GLAAD, and even Meta's own independent oversight board, which has said the company needs to improve how it handles queer content and reduce repeated moderation errors. And here's the thing. I'm not one of those people who thinks that every time my Instagram reel gets like 312 views, it's because Mark Zuckerberg personally woke up and said, like, you know what? Screw Josh today. He's too gay. Like, I wish I were that important to Mark. Seriously. Sometimes content just like flops. Sometimes it doesn't do what you want it to do. Sometimes the algorithm, which is annoying as hell, decides your masterpiece deserves exactly 11 likes and no comments. And if there is a comment, it's from your mom. Like, that's social media. It's hit or miss. But there is a difference between an algorithm making bad recommendations and an algorithm repeatedly making what I'm going to call mistakes that disproportionately affect certain communities. Those are two very different conversations. And I will say, since Trump took office last year, my Instagram in just a few months, I went from 500 followers to almost 3,000. And then once Trump got into office and Mark Zuckerberg was having the meetings with Trump and they all became buddy, I stopped gaining followers. I lost some actually. I've been sitting at like 2,800 something and cannot gain any for the life of me. So like maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist or maybe some shit's going down. So what worries me isn't necessarily the censorship. It's a lot about it's the dependence. Like think about how many queer businesses exist almost entirely online now. Drag queens book shows through Instagram. Small nonprofits raise money through Facebook. Queer bars announce events through social media. Artists, therapists, fitness coaches, photographers, podcasters, entire careers exist and are promoted on these platforms. So what happens when one mistaken report or one coordinated campaign of bad faith reporting or just straight up deleting accounts because you're friends with Trump now makes your business disappear overnight? That's like fucking terrifying. Imagine opening your coffee shop tomorrow morning and finding that somebody welded the front door shut because a stranger anonymously filed a complaint against your business. Like, that's essentially what's happening when your Instagram account disappears. You lose customers, you lose income, you lose visibility, and sometimes you don't even get an explanation. I can no longer promote any of my posts or boost my posts or use my reels to create ads because I apparently am posting content that has to do with social issues. So my free speech is no longer my free speech. Now, the owners of the bar, the Stud, said that one of the most frustrating parts wasn't even just that the account was suspended. It was that they weren't clearly told what specific content had violated a policy or how to avoid the problem in the future. And that's a really big issue, like, because how are creators supposed to follow the rules that aren't consistently explained? And now, to be fair, I also don't think content moderation is easy. Everything's run by AI and whatever. Nobody's sitting there being like, beep, boop, boop, let me call the Stud or talk to them and see what content was bad and explain this to them. Like, Meta has billions of users, like billions. Like, there is no universe where every moderation decision is going to be perfect. Artificial intelligence makes mistakes. Don't I know it? Humans also make mistakes. The appeals process takes time. Like, I actually have empathy for how incredibly difficult that job must be once it gets to a human being. But when the same communities repeatedly report similar experiences, eventually you have to stop calling everything an isolated incident and start acknowledging and asking whether the system is kind of built to work against you. And honestly, this is where like psychology comes in again, because I am a psychologist, apparently. Like, algorithms don't hate people, right? People train algorithms. Algorithms learn from human decisions, and algorithms reflect humans and their bias. That's why they sometimes inherit our blind spots, which means technology isn't magically objective just because it's technology. Technology reflects us. So if technology is a racist, homophobic piece of MAGA, then all the black and gay accounts are going to get canceled, you know? But here's what I would encourage everyone listening to do, regardless of your politics, okay? Diversify. Don't build your entire business on one app, because who knows what the fuck is going to happen. Own your own website. Build an email list. Create a newsletter. Maybe have a backup account just in case, which I've seen a lot of people doing lately. Collect customer information with, permission. Obviously, I do work in marketing. You can't just spam people. Like, Instagram is borrowed land. I mean, just like this entire country is borrowed land. TikTok is borrowed land. Facebook is borrowed. Your website, however, that is yours. You own that. That is all you. Your email list, your community, that is all you. So finding ways to do you and own that shit is going to be your backup. But if this weird cancellation of multiple queer creators tells us anything, is that when one company has the power to make an entire business disappear with the click of a button, even temporarily, that's something all of us should pay attention to. Whether you're a gay bar or not, whether you're a drag performer or not, whether you're a small business or a big business, or just a creator trying to like make a living or share your art, like, technology should help communities thrive, not leave them wondering whether they'll still exist online tomorrow. And gosh, that was a week, wasn't it? Like, there was so much more I was going to put in this episode, but I was like, this is too much. This is enough. If today's episode reminded us of anything, it's that facts matter, which is why I served them up to you cold and fresh. Whether it's politicians using queer people as political talking points, misinformation being spread about our community, and tragedies like what happened in Berlin, or social media platforms making decisions that can impact queer creators and businesses overnight, it is incredibly easy to react emotionally, as you have heard me done today, before we actually understand what's happening. That's exactly why I love doing these episodes, not to tell you what to think, but to also like let my rage out, but also to encourage all of us to like ask better questions, slow down, look at the evidence and the facts, and refuse to let outrage become our default settings. One of the things that I love about our queer community is our resilience, how we have survived so much discrimination, misinformation, these political attacks, moral panics, epidemics, violence, and countless attempts to erase us. And somehow we still manage to find reasons to celebrate ourselves, create art, build communities, support one another. I think we could support each other more. A lot of queer creators have not been supporting me when I've reached out to them, but that's another topic for another episode. I keep doing what I can. But I think we can try to support each other more while like laughing in the process. This is all something worth protecting, okay? And if today's conversation and news stories and my absolute insanity resonated with you, make sure you're following me on Instagram and TikTok at _hotairpod. Head over to my website, hotairwithjoshuarobert.com, to shop my merch, submit your listener stories and topic suggestions. And don't forget that I have a whole new podcast out called Screaming, Where Horror Lives. Spooky, I know, completely different from Hot Air, where I'm doing once monthly, about hour-long episodes talking about horror movies, horror news, spooky stories. It's really just an outlet for me to talk about things I'm passionate about beyond queer rights. I just fucking love horror. So that's what it's about. So thank you for spending your time with me today. Never stop asking questions. Never stop thinking critically, and never let someone else convince you that your existence needs to be debated or that you're not masculine because your testosterone is low. Because I have a lot of testosterone. Now I'm going to go chop down a tree like a lumberjack in the woods. And I will see you next Tuesday.
HOTAIR, hot takes therapy, no filter. Say what I mean. HOTAIR, let's be real. You're listening to Hot Air.